Joining me now is the independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He's the chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor and Pensions Committee. He's also a member of a number of other committees, including the Veterans Affairs and Budget Committee. Senator, it is great to see you. You and I have had so many opportunities over the last few years to talk about health care, about climate, in the last year about Israel and Gaza. We'll touch on all those things in a minute. But here I want to go back to something that you've been talking to us about literally for 4 decades. You have been warning that the billionaires are controlling both our political system and our economy. Up till now, the billionaires have largely not agreed with you. They've sort of said, you know, whatever, we're just doing our thing in quiet. That's all changed. Donald Trump has his own emotional support billionaires right now, and they're saying the quiet parts out loud. They are out there needing him to win so that their hegemony can continue.
Well, what you are seeing as a result of Citizens United is really the undermining of American democracy in a way that we have never seen. You have a small number of billionaires pouring hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, led by Elon Musk and Mrs. Adelson and others, into Donald Trump. Billionaires are also there for Harris. The bottom line is that while we got to elect Harris on Tuesday, our long-term goal is to get big money out of the political process, get rid of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, and move to public funding of elections. Or else, at a time when a handful of billionaires control the economy, they're also going to control completely our political system. And that is not the direction in which we should be going.
And you made a remarkable closing argument that you posted to the Internet the other day. It's gone around, and I wanted to talk to you about this because the point you are making is salient. This may actually be the difference between winning and losing for Kamala Harris, and that is there are many places, many topics on which you do not agree with the Biden administration. You do not agree with Kamala Harris. You do not agree with a lot of Democrats. But you have decided that you would like to support the candidate over whom you may have the greatest influence, against whom you may protest, who will not do more damage than good in the end. This is an important conversation that a lot of uncommitted voters need to hear. A lot of people who are pretending they want to sit on their hands or vote for a third candidate need to hear right now that the presidency is not a custom-made suit for you. It is the best bet you have. You vote for the person who you think is going to be better, not worse.
Look, I've been running around the country doing my best to see that Kamala is our next president. And it's not just that Trump is trying to undermine American democracy. It's not just that Trump literally does not believe that climate change is real. He thinks it's a hoax, which means if he's elected, the struggle against climate change is over, and God knows, God only knows what kind of planet our kids and future generations will inherit. It's not only that we struggle to make sure that women have the constitutional right to control their own bodies, but as you've just said, Ali, I think there are a lot of people out there who strongly disagree with Biden and Harris on Gaza, and count me in as one of those people. In fact, as soon as Congress reconvenes, I have a resolution. It's going to get to the floor of the Senate, which says no more offensive arms sales to this horrific Netanyahu government that is laying waste to the Palestinians in Gaza. Horrific humanitarian disaster. I disagree with Biden and Harris on that. But what I want to say to the people who are going to sit it out, even on that issue, forget climate change. Forget income and wealth inequality. Trump wants to give more tax breaks to billionaires. Forget women's rights. Even on that issue, the Republicans are far, far worse than the Democrats. At a time when children are facing mass malnutrition and starvation in Gaza, when Gaza has been leveled by Netanyahu, we cannot get the Republicans to put one nickel into humanitarian aid to feed starving children in Gaza. So even on that issue, we will have much more leverage over the Harris administration than we will over the Trump administration. Trump and Netanyahu are both right-wing extremists. They're in bed together. So I would hope very much that people who are thinking of sitting it out, maybe voting third party, please don't do that. Because even on this issue, we have a better shot to bring about change in U.S. policy with Harris in the White House than with Trump.
We've largely, through the course of this election, avoided the conversation about health care. You, again, do not feel that the current administration has gone as far as you'd like. You and I share a view that America should have universal health care, bottom line, like every other developed country does. They've started talking about it again. Donald Trump and Mike Johnson are floating this idea that they're going to get rid of even Obamacare. But Donald Trump, when asked in the debate what his idea was, he said he's got a concept of health care. A concept. We've been talking about health care in this country for 100 years, and he's got a concept, not actually a plan.
And he was president for 4 years, right?
Right.
Been actively involved in politics for 12 years, and he has a concept. Look, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, has provided subsidies to many millions of people. It has helped people. But I think the vast majority of the American people understand the current healthcare system is broken. It's dysfunctional. Its main function is to provide huge profits for the insurance industry and for the drug companies, and that it is doing. The industries are making huge profits. We need, as you've just indicated, to do what every other major country on earth does. And at a time when we're spending twice as much per capita on health care as other people, yeah, we need to move to a Medicare for all, single-payer system, no out-of-pocket expenses, go to any doctor you want. We need to substantially lower the cost of prescription drugs so we're not paying 5 times as much as the people in other countries for the same drug. And by the way, on that area, I think the Biden-Harris team, and we've been working with them, has done a good job. We are seeing some reductions in prescription drug prices, but we've got to continue that.
But partially that's because people like you have been a gadfly in this, and that is your proof.